I'm Zoe Walker.
And I'm Neil Bromwich, and we're talking about Celestial Radio, the project we're presenting at MCA for Performance Space.
Celestial Radio is a boat covered in 60,000-inch square mirror tiles, and we're broadcasting a radio station from it. So it's travelling around the oceans, searching for the unseen or looking at different environments and broadcasting from the mast.
Celestial Radio is a project which started 7 years ago, actually, in the UK, in Essex. And it was inspired by the kind of maverick spirit of offshore pirate radio from the late 60s and early 70s. And one particular boat, the Mi Amigo, which was for Radio Caroline boats. And it was the first offshore radio, it was the first pop radio station in the UK. And it just was like this breath of fresh air with the very stuffy BBC. And the licensing laws at the time allowed people to buy these boats and broadcast outside in international waters, which was only 6 miles from the shore of the UK. So you could go down to the coast of Essex and see this boat with this massive aerial broadcasting to half of the UK and quite a considerable amount of Northern Europe. And Radio Caroline had this kind of fun, maverick spirit to it that we wanted to kind of rekindle with Celestial Radio.
So the idea of Celestial Radio is that we are, through the broadcasting, we are searching for unique things about specific landscapes that we pass, and drawing that out and then broadcasting it through the radio station. Here in Sydney, we have been looking at the biodiversity of Sydney Harbour and the kind of subaquatic world. So the things that we don't necessarily see when we're in the harbour walking around the shoreline. So trying to draw out the things that we can't see under the water. And the title of this particular broadcast is Phosphorescence Song. And we've been particularly interested in the kind of biodiversity and the phytoplankton and the more minute things within the oceans, as well as the larger things that we might normally think about.
The starting point for us for Phosphorescence Song was learning the fact that there are over 550 different species of fish within Sydney Harbour alone, and for the whole of Northern Europe, including the British Isles, there's only 350 different species of fish. So Sydney Harbour has this incredible biodiversity, and is an absolute jewel of marine life. So that was our starting point. So from there we constructed a series of conversations with people around these subjects.
Every time we go to a different place, we work with a locally based musician. And here we've been really lucky in working with James Brown, who is based in Sydney. And he's been brilliant to work with. So we've worked more around the idea of a sort of a concept album. So we've edited down the interviews to quite short sound bites. And then James has composed new music that he's mixed them in with. So it's quite a sort of psychedelic track. So it's more like you're listening to an album, and you're listening to each track as you walk around the harbour, and you can kind of get into this sort of feeling of being in this subaquatic world.
Yeah, it's a very immersive soundtrack. When you put the headphones on and do this walk, you're kind of entering into another world, and you're not only hearing the sounds through the headphones, you're also seeing the light flashing off the boat as it travels around the harbour.
What we're doing with Celestial Radio broadcasting, with all the broadcasts, is searching for things that people might not necessarily think about in the landscape that they're in. So it might be their home environment, they might live there, or they might be visiting, and to sort of look beneath the surface and think about other things and think beyond the horizon. And it came really from being inspired by Radio Caroline, and by the way that the people running Radio Caroline were able to change to change society actually in quite a big way, because they brought pop music to the British public at a time when you couldn't listen to that on the radio. So for us, we sort of almost see ourselves a bit like a chip that might have broken off from Radio Caroline in the 70s and is still floating around on the oceans. And that we, as these almost like these lost DJs on a boat, are able to kind of pick up on things that are still going on or might be forgotten about in a place, where people are still trying to change the world that they live in. And here in Sydney Harbour, we're particularly interested in drawing out for listeners the unique biodiversity that is there in the harbour, because it's such an incredible thing to have there, and it'll get people to think about how important it is to save that. So that's really, with this particular broadcast, what we're interested in. So we've talked to a lot of scientists, so we can get a lot of detail on that, and divers who are really enthusiastic about it, and people that are trying to actually preserve that.
Mm. And it's also interesting actually talking to people who've got indigenous knowledge of the harbour. So talking to experts in Aboriginal knowledge around how the harbour was used as a food source, and how that balance that was in nature before the arrival of the First Fleet was then destroyed through different types of fishing methods of, casting nets down and pulling out large amounts of fish. And those kind of lessons can now be kind of reconsidered in an age now where we're starting to consider the whole planet as perhaps something that is a limited resource rather than this endless abundance.